Chapter 19. His first awareness as he flailed his way back into consciousness was how much everything hurt. Well, not everything. The hurts slowly resolved themselves from amorphous mass into specific complaints. His hand hurt. That made sense, he realized, as the memories untangled themselves. His face hurt. A lot. He remembered now, far too late, his earliest speculations about Gavrak sculpting his face into something more saturine. Unenchanting the room would have reset his face back to whatever it had been. No wonder his cheekbones felt like they'd been punched several times from the inside of his skull. Valvina was going to kill him. The bones of his legs ached, too, and the skin teetered between itching and burning. Had he made himself taller as well? He wasn't going to fit into any of Gavrax's old robes. Good riddance. He forced himself to open his eyes. He was laying on the pallet of his bedroom. All around him lay the detritus of his study. There had always been a sense, a tangible awareness of aliveness from the accumulated artifacts. He only just realized that now because it was gone. Everything around him was inert. The books would still contain words, he knew, but those words might no longer say what they had originally said. Everything enchanted had been rendered mundane. He didn't even know what most of it had been, he realized. He hoped none of it was important. Ah, he awakes! Gav turned his head. Zaxxas made himself a nest of assorted objects. It looked like a rather cozy place to sit, actually, feathered with scraps of demagicified parchment. He didn't look much different, to Gav's relief. The volume of his hair was apparently natural, as it had not been disturbed by the de-enchantment in the slightest. He was wearing a lounging robe, woven with burgundy and bronze threads that had sleeves deep enough to hide both his hand and his stump. A woman curled herself at his feet. She looked familiar yet strange. Gav's eyes caught the jeweled snake armband that he realized he had last seen her, and he realized he had last seen her with scales and without pupils. It was Zaxxas's paramour, whose name Gav realized he still did not know. I don't think any of us enjoyed that experience, but you seem to take it particularly hard, Zaxxas said. Still, it was fascinating. A wonderful opportunity to observe a major summoning firsthand. Only Zaxxas would have viewed that catastrophe as an interesting learning experience. Gav shook his head and then stopped immediately as the room began to swim. Speaking of hands, I hope you'll forgive the tastelessness of the pun, Zaxxas continued. I took the liberty of fixing yours. After all, the other older lady wizard, was that her name? Ertano? She wasn't using hers anymore. Gav's blood ran cold. Slowly, unsure of what he hoped to see, he raised his left wrist. It should have ended in a stump. Instead, there was a hand. Its skin was a shade lighter than that of his forearm, and the hand looked a bit too small and delicate. The back of it was slightly dotted with a few age spots. A ribbon of black symbols tattooed at the join covered the transition. Gav wiggled the fingers in horrified fascination. They wiggled on command. He touched fingertip and thumb. He could feel both. It was not his hand, but it acted as if it were. I know, it's a bit gauche to steal body parts from a rival, Zaxxas was saying. I mean, I never understood why, but people get very upset. Still, Zarakonars were hardly usable. I don't know what he had done to his skin to get it that color, but when the enchantments lifted, it practically bubbled off him. I took samples, but it wouldn't have done for a graft, not at all. I see, Gav croaked. A thought occurred to him. Didn't you want it for yourself? Arthano's hand, I mean? Zaxxas looked at him as if he were mad. Dear boy, you can't imagine I'd graft a left hand onto my right arm, would you? I mean, I could, but the symmetry would be all wrong. Dreadfully confusing. I thought that was why you used your left hand for the sacrifice. No? Oh, well, I see. You wanted your right for the bag. That's very sensible. Anyway, I must thank you. I'm very pleased with the alternative. He reached his arm out from under the sleeve to show off his new acquisition. The arm, like Gav remembered, ended at the wrist. Instead of a hand, Zaxxas had grafted on a brilliant blue tentacle. The moat squid arm curled in the air appreciatively. "Isn't it a delight?" Zaxxas took Gav's inability to look away as a token of appreciation. "So dexterous. Naraku here is most appreciative." Oh, Nakaru. Nakaru looked him straight in the eye, daring him to blush. He did. At least he'd freed her from the horrifying modifications her master had made, but her face must have hurt as much as his. "Are you all right?" he asked gently, and then realized he still did not know if she spoke enough of his language to answer him. She looked up, eyes flashing. "Nal Thakaru," she said, rising to her feet. She paused at the door, glaring. "Thekdol." "Nekuru," Zaxxas said, looking scandalized. He turned back to Gav. "My apologies. She's a little put out at having lost all her modifications. Anyway, we were just saying until you woke. Staying until you woke. Valvina offered us a ride home. She wanted to speak to you before we left. I'll let her know you're awake. Thank you for your hospitality. We really should do this again sometime." Zaxxas popped to his feet, looking a great deal more spry at his advanced years than Gav felt. "You're welcome," Gav said, unsure what else to say. He certainly had no desire to repeat the experience. What did she say, if you don't mind my asking?" Zaxxas sighed. "I really am sorry. I suppose that's what I get for choosing a warrior instead of a diplomat. She said, 'Thanks for nothing, asshole.' Well, not exactly, but you get the meaning." Gav nodded wearily. He expected to hear a great deal more of that as the day progressed. Valvina did not look nearly as bad as he had feared. He had managed to stagger to his feet and lean against the window, hoping weakness would be taken for insolence. Insouciance? I don't know that word. Let's see if I can. Well. It's a lack of concern. She had a few wrinkles at the corners of her eyes and a few streaks of gray in her hair. She wore a loose white gown belted around her hips, which made him think perhaps some parts of her anatomy were a bit less gravity-defying than they had been, but she kept most of her figure. He had been prepared to find himself facing an irate and nearly unrecognizable harridan. Instead, he found a woman who had clearly been dazzling in her youth and had aged to mere loveliness. He still had good sense to lead with, "I am so sorry." "You could have had the world, and this is what you chose?" She cocked an eyebrow at him. "I'd say you needed to make it up to me, but I don't think you even have anything I want at this point." She'd meant it to sting, but he was more relieved than anything else. She wouldn't like that, though. He held his fist to his heart and bowed. "I was never worthy of you to begin with." She snorted. "Insufficient, but at least a good try." He waved a hand at the piles. "The library's intact. May I offer you your pick as an apology?" Valvina raised her eyebrows in genuine surprise. "You really do feel bad, don't you? You keep surprising me." "How bad is it?" he asked. She leaned against the casement opposite his. "It will be a pain to layer everything back on, but there isn't much I can't redo." She examined him. "What are you thinking?" "I wasn't," he confessed with a laugh. "I was in pain and panicking." "Or what were you thinking?" He added that the lie that he had thought up after the fact. "I could feel Zarakonar's death curse coming, and I had no idea how to deflect it. Between him and Arthana, who knows what kind of traps we're about to have sprung on us. I've negotiated with demons before. It never ends well. I just wanted everything to go back to the way it was so I could be safely unconscious." She shrugged, but she did look a little less contemptuous. She wouldn't have felt any such thing, of course, but he had been standing closer to Zarakonar's body. A death curse was nothing to underestimate. She had never needed to know Zarakonar had not called one down. Well, she said, you're the one who took the brunt of it seems. You and Nakaru. Nakaru. I hope you didn't want that mirror. Speaking of mirrors, I suppose you've seen yourself? He shrugged as if it didn't bother him. In truth, he had not yet dared. What will you do? She asked, curious. He shrugged again, looking down on the village. It was a mess. Along with the dragon, bloodstains, and the visitors. Visitors had left the area strewn with half-eaten garlic donuts and trampled garlic hats. The villagers were picking through the wreckage, looking happier than he had seen them. What about you? He lobbed back at her. Me? She raised one elegant eyebrow. You're free of Zarakonar, he said. You can do whatever you want. Be whoever you want. Her eyebrows drew together. My dear man, whatever would make you think that I would want to be anyone other than who I am? I just mean, since he's not around to make you... He floundered. Did you use that wish of yours to change the world so women rule instead of men? No? She shifted her weight, and suddenly, somehow, despite the wrinkles and the silver hair and the less than clinging dress, his body reminded him once more that she was the most desirable woman he could remember ever seeing. You may be having some crisis of conscience. It's adorable that you think that you've been hiding it, but I like being evil. I like bending people's will to mine, and I love the power I can wield. Until a demon reshapes the world into one where I can rule without twisting libidos to my end, I intend to keep right on doing exactly what I'm doing. Give me a month or two, and I'll be back in fighting form. She took a step towards him, hips swaying. Sex is fun, sweetness. It's almost as good as power, and I plan to continue having as much of both as I possibly can until someone finally manages to drive a stake through my evil, conniving, very satisfied heart. She ran her fingertips up his chest, and his breath caught in his throat. You, on the other hand, maybe should consider hanging up the black robe after all. I'm not sure you ever really appreciated the joy of your work, but you've clearly lost the taste for it. She chucked him under the chin like he was a little boy. I do appreciate walking out of here with both my original hands still intact, so we'll say I owe you one. She sauntered away, pausing in the doorway. Take care of yourself, Gavarax. Settle down with that princess you've got your heart pinned on. Or, if you decide you've gotten your zest back, come visit with me sometime. I'll help you rediscover exactly how much fun evil can be. And then she was out the door. He stared after her for a moment. He took a deep breath and stepped up to the bedroom mirror. No shock of recognition. The middle-aged face that looked back at him did not look remotely familiar. No goatee, no dramatic coloring, dark brown hair slightly receding, brown eyes, skin that probably would tan if it ever got a reasonable amount of sunlight, patchy eyebrows that had been burnt off repeatedly and never really grew in right, a roundish face, a forgettable face, the face of a nobody. A totally different face. A totally different person. In robes that were a little too tight around the middle and a little too long at the hem. She couldn't possibly forgive Gavarax, but he wasn't Gavarax. He didn't even look like him anymore. Was it too late? He burst through the door into the hallway, trying to walk briskly without losing dignity. Then he gave up on dignity and gathered his robes in both hands and ran. Down the hall, towards the cell. Would she still be trapped? Would she have waited? If she wasn't trapped? Would she have waited if she wasn't trapped? He didn't have anything to offer her except that he'd lost one hand and a chance for world domination for her sake. And princesses didn't end up with men like him. But he had to at least try, or he'd never forgive himself. He rounded the corner. No guard was posted. He skidded to a halt. He tried to bring his breathing under control. He grasped the handle. The door opened at his touch. It was empty. He should have known. Gav sagged against the wall, closing his eyes. He had known. He had known from the very beginning how unlikely it was that she would forgive him. Why would she? He had kidnapped her, terrified her, held her captive, and allowed her to be nearly sacrificed to an ancient dark god. All right, half of that had been Gavrax instead of him, but even if she had been willing to think of him as a different person, that different person had still kept her captive. He hadn't set her free the moment Gav came to be. And even if she had forgiven him all that, she was a princess, and he was a reasonably incompetent middle-aged wizard with bad hair. One who was a coward, who had only managed to figure out the right thing after people had died. She deserved a hero. She would probably get a dynastic marriage to some overbred fop. He was neither. He waited for the snarl of rage in his chest, the only thing that really felt familiar. It wasn't fair that others had been born richer and more noble and more handsome than he was. None came. It wasn't fair. And there was nothing fair about birth. But he hadn't done much to deserve her, had he? To deserve anyone. He had been a coward and an idiot. But that didn't mean he couldn't try to deserve someone someday. He took a breath and opened his eyes and turned around. The staff had gathered while he had been lost in thought. They looked worried, waiting for his explosion after having lost both a chance at unbridled power and his own pet princess. Sirocco, Throck, and Orla, a few more guards. Garebeetle hovered in the background, unwise to the last. It hurt that after all that, they were still frightened of him. He had thought they'd reached something of an understanding, but then he had been evil and vengeful a lot longer than he had been collaborative. In their place, he would have been concerned as well. In their place, he would have tried to hide. But maybe after years of serving unreasonable masters, they had decided it was better to get the worst over with. He looked from one to the next. None would meet his eyes. First things first. The rooster is a man again, Throck supplied, clearly pleased that the first question was one he could answer. Gav nodded. Have his body sent back to Barbino's castle with full honors. The goblins exchanged glances. Sirocco? Gav said. The steward visibly braced himself. How much do you think those young fools on the tour would pay to sleep a night in a real dark wizard's castle? Sirocco just blinked at him for a minute. The goblins exchanged another round of glances, clearly concerned that their master had gone even more mad than before. Finally, the steward answered slowly. Quite a lot, I imagine. Gav nodded. Orla, do you think you could do a reasonable breakfast spread? Orla did not look any more confident. Master wants breakfast now? Normal speech, Orla, please, Gav interrupted, unless you need it to keep it up to stay in practice. The other goblin guard's jaw dropped. Orla adopted gamely. It's mid-afternoon, my lord, but I'm sure we could arrange something. No, I'm sorry, I wasn't clear, Gav said. I mean, if we were to take the changes that we made for the other wizards' rooms and make them permanent and bring in guests, could you turn out a full breakfast spread every day? The others looked baffled, but the excitement was kindling in Orla's eyes. I've kept practicing. I'm sure I could manage something humans would think is normal next time. I know it. Actually, at least half of it should be as weird as possible, Gav said, his thoughts spinning faster. Some plain things as well, so there's something they will actually eat, but I think lark's skulls might be exactly the kind of thing they're expecting, like the spread you had for the tours. I could do that, she said, her head bobbing. How often? As often as possible, Gav said firmly. We have a full staff here that's barely anything for all you do. I see no reason we shouldn't try for as many paying guests as we can. You're talking about turning the castle into a lodging house? Seriko asked slowly, trying to make sure he understood correctly. But a nice one, Gav said. A special one that people come specifically to stay at. Not just a place to sleep in while passing through. An experience, one that serves breakfast. And tea, Orla said, and then looked surprised at her own daring. She forged ahead. An afternoon tea, with a little sandwiches. Seriko nodded, getting pulled in despite himself. We could make tours a regular feature, maybe set up a tableau or two. I could contract my alma mater even and bring in some more actors. I'll bring squid, piped up Gairbeetle. No, said all the adults immediately. He looked crestfallen. Then he perked up. I'll make spooky noises in the dungeon. Much better, Gav said. And where will you be in all this? Gav turned. At some point, while he was talking, without him noticing, a ringless Alicia had arrived. She wore frizzy hair tied back, the collar still around her neck. He hadn't expected her. He fought down the bubble of hope in his chest. I won't be. There was a moment of silence, and then everyone started talking at once. Why not? Where will you go? We can't have a dark wizard castle without a dark wizard. The castle has never been without a master. What will we do without a master? He held up his hands. In the first place, people want a dark wizard castle. They don't actually want a dark wizard. They wouldn't know what to do with me. This way, you can set up my study and give them all the tours and not worry about an inconvenient extra person to trip over and mess everything up. It's easier to be mysterious if you're not here. In the second place, you've all been running this castle without any particular input from me for what, generations? You don't need a master, you never have. But what will we tell people? Seriko already looked at calculating. Tell them I'm meditating, or I've gone on search of some rare ingredient, or that I'm communing with the spirits. Let them imagine something. It's probably better than anything I could have done anyway. He tried not to sound too bitter. Gairbeetle mumbled something at his feet. Gav tried not to look exasperated. He'd thought they'd gotten past this. What was that, Gairbeetle? Suddenly, the little goblin threw himself at Gav, and before he could process what was happening, he found himself with arms wrapped uncomfortably around his knees. I'll miss you. I'll miss you too, Gav said, patting Gairbeetle awkwardly on the head. The hug immobilized his legs and tickled his nose with the faint scent of swamp and felt surprisingly nice. He had no memory of having been hugged before. When are you leaving? Orla cocked her head. In a few days, he lied. He would sneak out the back once they were occupied setting up the new order. Better to make a clean break. He reluctantly disentangled himself and left them chattering about improvements that could be made, both to make the bedrooms more comfortable and the rest of the castle less. Seriko was already planning musical evenings. Alicia followed him. He tried to act calm. I'm going to pause there.